Part 7 of the Rishi Sunak video. Please, you can go and verify and corroborate all of this information, see it's true yourself. That is through various internet resources bases such as Wikipedia, Google searching, but importantly the company sales registration system and their attached incorporation documents. You will see that this is all true. So we're looking at the Russian connection through to this system of fraud, through to my company, the royal family and the intelligence agency. Let's continue with that. So this article here is in relation to a UK company set up in the name of top Putin official in Ukraine. This was an article from the 27th of April 2023. Volodymyr Saldo, a Kremlin puppet in the Russian occupied territories, listed as firm's owner despite being under sanctions. Mr. Saldo, a notorious puppet of the Kremlin in the southern Ukrainian city of Kyiv, is listed as the owner of the UK company registered in November, 5 months after his name was added to the sanctions list. In June 2022, the government imposed a freeze on any UK assets Saldo owns and banned him from entering the country. British officials accuse him of promoting policies and actions which just destabilise Ukraine and undermine or threaten the territorial integrity, sovereignty or independence of Ukraine. Yet since November, he has been listed as the proprietor of a British company with an address of Hatton Gardens District, central London. Company's House, the UK corporate register, does not require proof of identity when people form companies. Why not? That's the big question, guys. Saldo did not respond to questions about his involvement in the company Grain Holding Limited, but his entry on the sanctions list has been updated since Grain Holding was registered to draw in details from the company's incorporation documents, suggesting that the UK authorities were aware of its existence and regarding the paperwork as genuine. So let's have a look at Mr. Saldo on Company's House. It's a Company's House search. Please go and do this yourself. You can see all these tabs here that you need to utilise. The main ones being overview, filing history and people. So we're going to look through these. So this is the overview page for Grain Holding Limited. You can search that company. It should bring this up on one of the top entries. Click on it and you'll see the overview page. Now, Mr. Saldo was appointed to this company in November 2022. You can see that here, Ukrainian nationality. Nature of business, growing of cereals, except rice, etc., etc. You can see that, grain. And here he is on the incorporation documents. So if you go into the filing history, you're now looking at the incorporation documents for the company. That's not very clear, actually. Hopefully you can see that. I've gone to a lower resolution to try and save space. So now we're looking at research in relation to information I had that there was a KGB or former KGB agent within the House of Lords in England of the Houses of Parliament. So we're now looking at an article in relation to that. And it relates back to Mr. Lebedev. I'm sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. So this is a news article. In fact, there's several. You can see here the Queen was asked to block House of Lords place for them, but he was allowed to be in. And Wikipedia shows that he was is a Russian-British businessman who owns Lebedev Holdings Limited, which in turn owns the Evening Standard. Now we know that it's now a fact that most mainstream media have been corrupted through this system of fraud. I have done a document on it and a video. Unfortunately, I haven't yet put the document in the document file link, but I'm going to be looking to do that very soon. So this allows the ability to provide misinformation to fit the narrative of this fraud, which I believe everything has been based around since Company's House was created in 1844, including our very own legal system, which, as we know, is under the Crown. This is just looking at this. Lebedev sits in the Lords of Crossbencher and made his maiden speech on the 12th of May 2021 during the debate on the Queen's speech after 2021 state opening of Parliament. Sunday Times reported that security services were uneasy over Lebedev from 2013, and Lebedev's father was a KGB agent. Now let's look at Lebedev Holdings Limited. And the address for them is featured throughout the fraud. That address features all the way through. We'll now look at the incorporation documents of that company. But if you go into the people record, it goes through to this person here, which links to Which Limited. We've all heard of Which Magazine, I believe. Is it a magazine? Not too sure, actually. So here's Which Limited now. So, of course, because they're connected, they have a financial interest in these other companies. And this is just the overview page. And if you look within Which, you have this person, and they link to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. Okay, we're now looking, and you can see Lloyd's Chambers, so it suggests a Lloyd's, potentially a Lloyd's Bank connection. Remember, the forged bank documents that I have appear to have been produced by Lloyd's Bank, forged bank documents. We're now looking within that company. It was incorporated in March 2000. So remember, we're only a couple of companies away now from that gentleman, who is a Russian who has connections through his father to the KGB and who sits in the House of Commons as we speak. And immediately you can see on the incorporation documents Clifford Chance. Now, Clifford Chance features heavily to Max Clifford, if you look at the Max Clifford research document, and also through to the media companies, which you'll see in the media video and document. And this is where things become extremely interesting. So on the same incorporation document, and you can see the page numbers on the bottom right. So if you want to go and look at this, page 7 of 38 of the incorporation documents, you've got a list of companies. So this is within the filing history of that last company. And if you look at the very top, Fleming Managed Growth PLC. Now, why is that significant? Well, you'll see there's a theme throughout all of my videos, and that is the shareholders within my company. Remember where I've obtained the forged bank documents through my company. So we're now just looking, these are all the other companies still on that incorporation document. So there's a financial interest, the ability to move, you'll see move money, laundered money, tax evasion, etc. Look at all these banks. We already know that most of these banks, if not all of them, are linked through to the international fraud and the World Trade Center disaster. That's just showing you an example, but you can look at this document. Don't forget, this document is now within the document file, and the link for that document file is in the description of this video and the others, certainly the latest ones. So that growth company, remember we mentioned at the top there, Fleming. Okay, let's look at that company, and here it is. It's now headed as JP Morgan Elect. Now remember, my shareholder within my company, Deborah Fleming, and her husband linked through to JP Morgan. And here we are, already a Russian connection. We've already seen others, but you can see this company is in liquidation. They were started in 1999. And look at the company names. So you can see the Fleming name throughout, all the way through JP Morgan, and then the Fleming name was removed from the company name, and that was removed in 2006. Whoops. Now, there was no articles of association for this company, but sometimes you can find links through other documents, and here we are, a link through the memorandum of articles, I believe. So when you click onto this, you will see FRP Advisory Trading. Now, that has already featured throughout the previous fraud research. And people are asking me to simplify this. It's very difficult to simplify this without showing the evidence, and I think that's now why this is gaining so much traction. I mean, this information is now worldwide. There's groups forming all over the world and starting to realise what this is all about. So JP Morgan, we're back into the company looking at different person record now, and you can immediately see a Wessex company. Remember, the shareholder, Deborah Fleming. If you look at the BCP Council and the World Trade Center document, has connections to the Wessex companies that have been set up. And here we go, we have an address in Southampton for that, where they relate. And you can see within that person record now, we've got NHS Lotteries Limited connected, Nuffield Health, which we know is that, if you look at my health document, that's already featured on there, and that is a fraudulent company. Now we're looking at a different person record now within JP Morgan Elec. Here it is. And we can see Friends of the Children of Great Ormond Street. So we've now, because obviously we've got the concerns of the child trafficking network. And it links through the same person within the company, links to BlackRock. Remember, BlackRock have got the, appearing to have the contract to rebuild Ukraine after this. BlackRock are key to this. In fact, they own so much now, according to research, around the world. Now within this person of JP Morgan Elec, we've got this company now in liquidation, City of London Group PLC. And here we are looking at City of London Group PLC. And on the incorporation documents, you have a name that features throughout, and also the address of City Road, but loads of different numbers within City Road they're using. Okay, so they're just picking, it seems as though they're picking addresses that there's no affiliation to. And you can see this company changed its name in 1988, and again in January 2001. Okay, so that's 9 months before the World Trade Center disaster, and then they never changed their name again. And just still looking at the incorporation documents on the left here, you can see Stanley Davis linked throughout, and you'll see from other documents that Stanley Davis connects many of the dots with all of this. Remember, there's over 5 million companies. Back into the company, same company, we're looking at this person, and you can see there's now connections to Virgin. Now remember, the Virgin Foundation is linked through to the apparent child trafficking, because Richard Branson's been named as being on the Jeffrey Epstein list, and the NSPCC, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, and Childline, and Children in Need, and the BBC all link back through to the same companies very, very quickly to the apparent child trafficking element. There's also within the same person within the company, Marex Group PLC. Now that's relative because it links through to the a news article where the police appeared to be trying to conceal this fraud, and that was by the Daily Echo, Bournemouth Echo, back in September 2023, and the person they used in the article was connected and works for Marex. But this is very significant now. Within the same person record in this company, we now have the Post Office Limited, and hopefully you're all aware of the Post Office scandal. It's the largest miscarriage of justice in the UK's history. And remember, we've got the fraud all the way through this, fraudulent, what appear to be fraudulent bank documents produced by the bank, and they're trying to pin it on a faulty IT system. You can see this person resigned from this company, probably getting worried. Okay, in 17th of February 2023. Remember, I started reporting the fraud in September 2022. In fact, they resigned. Look, you can see all the resignation dates. September 2023, February 2023, all recently, all after I reported the fraud. Let's move forward. So back into this JP Morgan Elec. And we know the churches have been infiltrated by certain individuals. I think there's a historical reason for that. Again, I suggest you look at the historical video link in the bottom, which could explain why we're in this mess. But you've got Christian Aid. Let's look at Christian Aid. Now, I'm a Christian. The only reason I'm in this position is through my faith, to identify the truth and to ensure that nobody else is victimized in all of this, which is, of course, what most good God would want. And immediately on the incorporation document, we've got Bates, Wells and Braithwaite. Now, you'll know from if you go and look at the Madeleine McCann case and the critical child concern document and video, you'll see that that company links through to all of them. Strong connections through to the apparent child trafficking, and it also links through to Keir Starmer via his company, previous company, the Death Penalty Limited. And on this incorporation document, you've got other church-based companies, British and Irish churches. Keep saying this, guys, but it's all about getting back to truth. We must get back to truth. And there's just some other companies here. So back within the same person record. So we're now looking within the same person's record, and you can see that the court process is linked to them. So that means they're corrupted through this system of fraud. So that's the Court and Judicial Publishing Co. Limited. Now that was dissolved. I haven't got when it was dissolved actually, but back in now to JP Morgan Elect. So you can see at the top, now looking within this person's record. Let me zoom out a little bit. You can see we've got a Biotech Growth Trust PLC, Biotech. Within the Biotech company, now, so you're within the people section. So you click on this and you'll scroll down and you'll see this person. You click on the name. It'll take you to these British and American Investment Trust PLC. Remember, this is an international collaboration of fraud with the governments against the people, it seems. Let's look at that company. Still an active company. Now, they should have been incorporated according to the register as the British American Firm Holdings PLC in 1947. So British and American Film Holdings. If you look on the incorporation document, if I can zoom in, it's different. Okay, so in British and American Film Press, doesn't say holdings, that is fraud. Now it's also connected to Waterloo and Sons, as you can see on the bottom of that incorporation document. Now we've also got, within the same person, we've got a Worldwide Healthcare Trust PLC. So you can see they're centralising all of these financial assets, the control of the health system, all through a criminal, sinister system that is linked through to child trafficking, fraud, crime. It's huge. We have been duped for a long time, my friends. Now we're looking in the same area. You see insurance companies, Brit Insurance Holdings Limited. So I suspect the insurance companies, it's part of the fraudulent system. And of course, we all pay the insurance policies. And if a claim is never made or a claim is unsuccessful, then all of that money gets swept up and taken by these individuals involved in this fraud. And if they're set up fraudulently, anyway, that's a crime. So the whole thing's a crime, isn't it? If the fraud is there from the creation of the companies. And here you can see it's an unlawful entity company because it's got Swift Incorporations Limited, the same company that was used on mine, and you have Jordan's and Sons linked to it as well. So it's all a crime. Now this is where it gets in more interesting. Now remember, we've come via, there's Russian connections now. We've got a company called the Ukraine Opportunity Trust Limited. And remember, it links to my company, and this dissolved in July 2023. So they're panicking. They're trying to remove accountability for what they know is coming. So they shut down the company, and that company can't then be linked to any, well, it can be linked, but you then can't hold them legally accountable, even if you wanted to. So the crime is through our governments, through the creation. It's clear they're involved in this. The government need to be held accountable for all of this, and this shows that they are. So that was dissolved in 2023. Now that company has this linked through to it, FIM Capital Limited, which is an Isle of Man. Remember, offshore tax haven, but also allows the ability for money laundering to take place. We've also got this company linked to that company, so we can see the Ukraine Capita. Capita is linked through to all of this. Capita features throughout. You'll see that on the other videos. A fraudulent entity company, Capita PLC. Ukraine. Back in now, we've got an Earl Asquith linked to it. And within their records, you've got a Ukrainian Catholic Foundation. You've also got the British Ukrainian Foundation Society, sorry. and that's dissolved, and that dissolved again recently, June 2023, after I started reporting the fraud. You can see, guys, they are seriously panicking about this, and they need to. And I've just highlighted the name because I thought that name was relevant, but it doesn't become relevant later. Within the incorporation document, you've now got British Syrian. Now that's important. We've had the conflicts in Syria. Now it looks as though obviously we've got the connections through to the arms trade being corrupted through this system of fraud. It all comes back to this, guys. Every single thing we are talking about that is a scandal, pretty much everything that is a scandal that involves genocide, the conflicts, the vaccines, all comes back to this system of fraud that's been put in place by our governments through the falsification of the register. The crime at the beginning, remember, going right back to the basics of this, the crime is in the creation of the documents. That means the whole lot becomes a crime. The crime is the creation of the companies through the forgery. The whole lot is then a criminal system. So we're now still within that company. We're now looking at another record, and we have climate change companies. Now, I've said in one of the other videos, I do believe, not necessarily that climate change is an issue, but I can't believe, if the figures are right, of course, with the population increase over the last few decades, I can't believe that increase doesn't have a detrimental effect on the environment. But I think it can be dealt with in a moral way and an ethical way through choice, incentivized choice over staged periods, with people making their own choice on whether they have children through staged intervals to help maintain a sustainable population growth, if that makes sense. But I think they're panicking. I think because this fraud has enabled them to make so much money from having more people, and we know they've incentivized having more through the benefit system, I think they're now panicking and looking at rather sinister means to control the population when it's not actually needed. It can be done, like I've said, I believe, through a choice process, incentivized choice. But here we are, we've got energy companies, sustainable energy companies. They're cashing in on the whole climate change thing through the system of fraud. Back into the company now, and we're going into Bryanstone School. And that has already been mentioned. And also we've got a company here that is linked to, now I haven't had a chance to highlight in all of these, I don't think, but Credit Suisse was a tenant of the World Trade Center building at the time of its collapse. So let's look at Mr. Zelenskyy. So this is his Wikipedia. And I found this bit particularly interesting. I mean, I've heard several things, that he's acquired a couple of yachts, that he's got property through this criminal system. And of course, that would suggest he's got connections somehow to those deeply involved in it. And lo and behold, you will see in a moment the connection to my company. Not necessarily to him, but through Ukraine. But it says here in October 2021, the Pandora Papers revealed that Zelenskyy, his chief aide, and the head of the security service of Ukraine operated a network of offshore companies in the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus and Belize. These companies included some that owned expensive London property. Around the time of his 2019 election, Zelenskyy and his shares in a key offshore company over I won't pronounce that. But the two men appear to have arranged for Zelenskyy's family to continue receiving the money from these companies. Zelenskyy's election campaign had centred on pledges to clean up the government of the Ukraine. Now, he was a movie star, if you're not aware of this, and somewhere it says it in the Wikipedia, but just go and search it yourself. And we've got massive connections through to film, media, celebrities, all the way through to the child trafficking, and you'll see why Ukraine is so heavily linked to the child trafficking. And of course, we've got the connections through to my company via the Isle of Wight, the offshore islands, child trafficking, apparent child trafficking, and links to the child that I've been trying to help. And you'll see that later as well. But if we search Kyiv, so the capital of Ukraine, it brings up these results. This is in the company's house search, by the way. So you just type this in, and here we go. Immediately, you have an address that is linked through to companies linked to my shareholder, my company, Deborah Fleming. But importantly, below, you've also got this one, which is a closed company. So that comes up. So let's look at that company. And we're looking at that on the right. And you can immediately see that there's a connection to the fraud. And that is through this address, 50 Broadway, because that features on the police associated companies that I've already linked and the fraudulent entity companies that are key behind this. So we're now looking within that company on the right. And you have to, it's an interesting one, this, because when you go into it, you've got to click on another link to take you through to this record. Okay, so you click on it and it links through to here. And this was closed in 2017, this company. Okay, well before the invasion by Russia, supposed invasion, is it real? Is it theatre? I know what I believe. But on the incorporation documents, we've got UBG Corporation Limited, okay? Now you can look over this, don't forget a few times, it appears complicated, but when you have the document in front of you and you look over it, you'll see that it's simple. So let's look at that company, UBG, Corporation Limited. Here it is. Oh, where's it gone? Oh, sorry, the screen jumped there. So here we are, UBG Corporation. And you can see it was incorporated in at the top there, 2011. And you can see this is the person of significant control. I haven't researched them, but someone might have time to research them. So look at the incorporation documents. And here we are, we've got Duport Duport Association. Now that features throughout the fraud, but significantly it features to the MPs for the area of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, where my company relates and where the shareholder has a vested interest as well. So we've already got a link through to Duport, but it gets more interesting. So we go into the person records of UBG Corporation. Look at this record. You can see that person. So you click on this person and it then goes through and shows you they've got 19 companies. So we're now going to look at one of those companies. And here you can see this one, Inxepro Limited. So let's look at that company. Now remember, we're very close to the research here. Remember, there's over 5 million companies. I keep saying that, but it's so important to remember that. It's almost impossible that there is not a validity to all of this, and there's fraud throughout. And here we go, Barbara Kahan, already linked through. From the Harman High article, you will know, if you've seen my other videos, that Barbara Kahan features on the Harman High article of Finchley Road fraud, linked to international government fraud, corrupt politicians, and through to exploitation and fraud of the taxation system. And just to show you, if you go into Barbara Kahan on that record, you'll see there's over 22,000 either previous or current companies linked to that name. And I suspect all evidence suggests that person passed away in 2000, and yet people were still using their name on their company records. And this is how, don't forget, it's Companies House fraud, it's a government fraud to make these companies free from liability and accountability for the criminal processes and systems they're involved in, to defraud the general public through the taxation system, real estate, and much more, linked to very sinister crimes. So we're looking now into that same person, and you can see this company that was dissolved. I haven't got when they were dissolved, actually. Oh, sorry about that, jumped page accidentally. So let's look into that company now. So we're within the record of that company, and you can see we've got this person, and they link to the Royal Air Squadron Limited. So remember, we've come in from a Ukraine company to a Royal, so there's a vested interest through this, a link through the fraudulent system to this, to the ability to move defrauded money linked to child trafficking all the way through these companies, because they're very closely associated. And that's how it works. They move the laundered money through. But we've now got a connection to the military, Royal Squadron Limited. Let's look at that company. And within the incorporation document, you'll see Slaughter and May, the legal firm that features throughout. And they have false entity companies as well, so a false register against the incorporation document. So we're within that record now, same person. And we're now looking here, we've got Knighton House School. And we've got an address here to this person within it in Dorset. Remember, this is all very close. It looks complicated, but it's not. We're going into records a few times just to follow a trail and then going back into it. Very closely connected, fraud throughout. And here we are. We've now got a connection to, very close connection to my company. Because remember, the NHS Chief Executive, former NHS Chief Executive, who is now a director of my company, I was removed. They were put in place. Deborah Fleming, you can go and look at it. Export Manor Freehold Limited. Okay, I was removed as a director and they were put in my place because they knew I was trying to stop the fraud. And they linked through to the health authority throughout Dorset, Hampshire, Isle of Wight. And we've got a connection here already to this address, which features. But if we keep moving forward, so we've got Alum Court Limited. So we just click on the company and it takes you to here. And within their people records, you just click on people, you can see that Napier Management. Now, actually, when our management company for our building resigned, this company came in, or others suggested, who were, I suspected, well, they're involved in this fraud, brought in Napier as a potential management company. And they would have, if they'd have got it, they would have been able to then try and conceal this fraud. So we've now got links, personal links to me. I showed them around our block of flat, in fact. And within the same person record now, we've got another company within Bournemouth. You can see Gardens, Bournemouth. Remember, this block of flats that my company relates to is in Dorset, Bournemouth and Dorset. And within there, you've got this person. And then through there, they link to through there to this person, which you'll see in my other documents and videos. Now, this person is very significant, if they're real, of course, because they link many of the management companies in the area. So this person links through to the Police and Crime Commissioner for the area, David Sidwick, for the area of Dorset. So there's connections through to all the management companies and therefore the use of the forged bank documents, the crime, the link to the child trafficking. I'm not saying any of these individuals are directly involved, but they are most certainly very closely connected to this international government corruption and linked to international child trafficking. But they also link to a Masonic hall in Dorset. Now, all of this, it's no surprise now that I suspect an attempt was made to take my life. Now, back then, I didn't realise the full extent. I knew there were Russian connections to all of this. But this is just to show you, corroborate what I'm saying, a photograph that I took of a glove on the 24th of January. You can see the date here, a message that I sent to somebody. And it was a rubber glove turned inside out and left right by the door of my van. Now, my van door, sliding door, was facing into the road. There was no need for anyone to be so close to it. And I didn't think too much of it at that point. Surgical glove used, turns inside out by my door. But then I saw, I got out and walked my dogs and I saw two people who sounded like they were Russian or Eastern European sounding. And they walked off down the road. And I didn't think too much of it. Walked off in their direction and they had already turned around. And there was nothing where they'd gone to. There was no building, no house. They just turned around, walked back, and they were looking over their shoulder at me and still speaking. Now, eventually, I got back to the van and I thought, wow, could this be? And I had to suspect that it was an attempt on my life through poisoning. So I wiped all the handles down on the van and I sent this message to somebody that I know. Used glove right by my door, opening onto the road earlier, and two dodgy looking Russian sounding guys acting suspiciously. There's no way someone should have been that close to the van, let alone with gloves on, and it definitely wasn't there earlier, referring to the glove. I've wiped all of the handles down and moved elsewhere. So that brought me to the concern regarding the poisoning in Salisbury. So this is research showing that poisoning in Salisbury. And you're hopefully aware of this, of Sergei and Yulia Skripal, where an attempt appeared to be made on their life. In fact, it was an attempt to made on their life, wasn't it? In fact, did one of them... I'm not too sure if one of them died. I'm sorry, I'm terrible. No, I should have... I know somebody died, didn't they? But looking at the article, you can see here a car was recovered. Now, Salisbury is very close to Dorset. It's very close to where my company is. It's about 45-minute drive away. But they also recovered a vehicle in Gillingham in Dorset. And you had here British Prime Minister at the time, Theresa May, made a report on all of this, and the intelligence agencies. We know the intelligence agencies are all involved in this fraud and linked through to the child trafficking. And we know that my former NHS Chief Executive Officer Director from my company has links through Ian Fleming to MI6. But this also mentions the counter-terrorism involvement in this fraud, in this poisoning, and the links through to the airports that they use. Now, we know the airports are infiltrated through this fraud. And now there's articles here showing the vehicle being removed in Gillingham in Dorset. And within that article, it mentions that specialist units from the RAF regiment prepared to move the truck, which belongs to the Ashleywood recovery firm based in Blandford. Now, Blandford is further into Dorset and links through to this fraud. So now we come back to, just to end this document in this video, Bob Seeley. And that is because if you research Wikipedia on Bob Seeley, not only did he start up the Offshore island group that links to apparent child trafficking and child murder and abuse on the islands around the UK, but he was also heavily involved in the Russian side of things, let's say. You can read, I'll go and suggest you look at it and see how many connections there are to Russia. Not only that, he was involved in the decision-making process on the supply of arms to different nations around the world by the UK. And he's the Isle of Wight MP. And of course, we've got the connections to the Isle of Wight via my management company. But he's also an article by the BBC. We know the BBC is connected to this heavily. Children in Need, connected heavily. And he was also on the Russia informal parliamentary group. So this is very relevant because you've also got the Syria connection there. So I thought I would just mention that. Now, Ukraine. Let's look at Ukraine itself. And I'll read this to you. Ukraine is a source, transit and destination country for men, women and children trafficked transnationally for the purpose of commercial sexual exploitation and forced labour. Ukrainian women are trafficked to Russia, Poland and then various other countries mentioned there. The majority of Ukrainian labour trafficking victims were men exploited in Russia, the Czech Republic and Poland, primarily forced to work for slave labour and exploitation and sex trafficking, etc. Now I suggest you look at Adrenochrome if you haven't already done so, and research Adrenochrome. If you want to know the extent of how awful this all is, have a look at Adrenochrome. But here, this suggests that the Ukrainian invasion by Russia has a direct involvement with the child trafficking. And that's because during the 2002 refugee crisis, stemming from the Russian invasion, numerous cases of human traffickers targeting women and children were reported. And the UN Refugee Agency has recognised many refugees fleeing to borders find themselves in a state of extreme danger, are vulnerable and exposed to predators whose main purpose is exploitation. Now that makes sense, doesn't it, with all of these conflicts that we've seen, and if there's an international collaboration through child trafficking, fraud, real estate, property, then what better way to gather children, orphans, and bring them into the child trafficking, abusing network? So I think that's something was worth mentioning before I end this document. My main concern now is the directed energy systems that are now in place, and I'll be doing a video in relation to that soon. God bless you all.